welcome. Look, if you're in healthcare, you know data is absolutely vital. It's your compass. But, well, it's also incredibly sensitive stuff.
Highly sensitive.
So the big question is, how do you tap into the power of cloud analytics, let's say with Microsoft Azure, get those amazing insights, but keep everything secure? And critically, HIPAA-compliant.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
That's what we're diving into today, trying to distill how you build that secure environment on Azure. Where discovery doesn't compromise patient trust.
It's a really delicate balance, isn't it? Azure has, an amazing set of tools. But for healthcare, security and compliance have to be baked in from the very start. It's job number one.
Right.
IAPA, it's not just a set of regulations you check off. It really reflects that core relationship between a patient and their provider. Think about it.
Yeah.
Would you share your most private health details if you weren't absolutely sure they'd be kept safe?
No way. Absolutely not. So that trust, it needs to be part of the actual system design.
Exactly. Built right in.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. Within Azure, what are those foundational technical things organizations can use to meet HIPAA standards right from the get-go?
Well, first off, you need to create these isolated digital spaces. Think Azure Virtual Networks, VNets. They act like your own private section of the cloud.
Okay, so keeping it separate from the public internet.
Precisely. And then you layer on top of that private endpoints. These create direct, secure, almost like private tunnels between your Azure services within that secure VNet.
Yeah.
So you're really minimizing any kind of public exposure path.
Right, establishing a secure digital perimeter.
Okay.
Got it. So once you have that safe space, how do you control who gets in and what they can actually see or do?
That's where Microsoft Entra ID comes into play. Think of it as your really sophisticated digital security guard and gatekeeper.
Okay.
You implement things like role-based access control. So people only get permissions for their specific job function. A researcher might see aggregated trends, but maybe not individual patient names.
Least privilege, right. Only what they need.
Yeah, exactly. The principle of least privilege. Grant the absolute minimum access needed. And then there are things like managed identities. They make it easier for applications themselves to authenticate securely. Plus, conditional access adds another layer.
How so?
It checks other things before granting access, like is the user logging in from a trusted location? Is their device compliant with security policies? It adds context to the login attempt.
That sounds very granular, very controlled. What about the data itself?
Yeah.
Protecting it when it's just sitting there or when it's moving between systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Fundamental is end-to-end encryption, basically scrambling the data so it's unreadable without the right key.
Standard practice, hopefully.
It should be. Azure handles this encryption automatically for data at rest, like in storage and in transit when it's moving. And for organizations wanting even more control, they can manage their own encryption keys.
Okay.
But the security doesn't stop there. Azure also has specific platform-level features that are really helpful for healthcare analytics scenarios.
Okay, this is where it gets more tailored. Like what are some of these platform features?
Well, take Azure SQL Warehouse. It offers things like row-level security and column-level security. Meaning you can control access within a data table. So maybe Analyst A sees all rows but only certain columns, while Analyst B sees different rows entirely. Very fine-grained.
Okay, that's powerful.
Then there's dynamic data masking. This can automatically hide or, mask sensitive data fields like patient social security numbers or names for users who don't need to see the raw information. They can still query the other data, though.
So the analyst can still work, but the sensitive bits are protected.
Exactly. And you've also got permission controls within Microsoft Fabric workspaces and even down to individual items like reports or data sets. And let's not forget Microsoft Purview.
What role does Purview play?
Think of Purview as your data governance hub. It helps you map out your entire data landscape, understand data lineage, where did it come from, how has it changed, classify sensitive data. It gives you that visibility needed for, proving IP compliance.
So it's not just locking the doors, it's also about knowing exactly what's inside and controlling who sees which specific parts. Could you maybe walk us through a quick example, how this all fits together day to day?
Sure, let's picture this. You're bringing in electronic health records, EHRs, right? You might use Azure Data Factory pipelines built securely, of course. That data lands in one lake, which is Fabric's central data lake. As soon as it lands, your governance policies, maybe set up through Purview, can be applied. Classification happens.
Okay, data's in, it's tagged.
Right. Now, say a data scientist needs to do some analysis. They might use a Spark notebook in Fabric, but their access, it's controlled by their role via Entra ID. Maybe they only get to work with data that's already been de-identified.
So they can't see patient specifics.
Correct. Then someone builds a report in Power BI, maybe using direct lake mode for speed. Those reports, they automatically inherit the security settings, the row-level security, the masking that were defined earlier in the process.
Ah, so the security follows the data.
Exactly. And underpinning all of this, every action, who accessed what, when, what query was run, it's all logged in Azure Monitor. That creates your essential audit trail for ITAD accountability.
Wow, okay. It really sounds like a complete lifecycle approach. Security built in at every single step.
That's the idea.
So the main takeaway seems to be embedding security and privacy right into the architecture from the start. It's not an add-on. Doing that lets you meet the regulations, sure, but more importantly, it builds that trust needed for real insights, for research, for improving care.
Precisely. You said it perfectly. A secure, compliant platform isn't just nice to have anymore. It's absolutely foundational for where healthcare is going with data.
Couldn't agree more. Now, for those of you listening who want to get into the deeper technical details, the full blog post behind our chat today is definitely worth checking out.
It lays out the blueprint.
And if you're part of a healthcare organization or maybe an expert yourself looking for help building these kinds of trusted analytics platforms on Azure, Curate Partners is a great resource to know about.
Good point.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. The key really is to keep building, keep innovating, but always with that bedrock of confidence in the security and privacy of patient data.